All right, welcome back to the Conquest Corner. And as shown, I don't know if people watched the battle report that I put up, but as shown at the end of the battle report, I just received this in the mail. So I do want to thank Parabellum Games for sending that. But the point of this is we're going to crack it open, take a look. Especially, I mean, I don't have the other one. I'm probably ordering it, most likely. But we're going to take a look and see, based off the other picture, what we think the differences are, and is there an option of try to get a 2-for-1. I know it doesn't exactly have that, but I might try to put a little something on top, maybe some of the printed out terrain, but let's go and take a look. All right, let's take a look. First things first, it's of course the big monster box. Nice looking photos. I didn't, originally in some of the artwork, I didn't see that it's I don't know, I guess a bunch of the undead or the souls. I guess we're going to see exactly what all that is. So let's crack this thing open. All right. Actually looks like a little bit of a texture on that. Unintentional, but that's fine. What I will say, it is less sprues than I thought, especially with this big box. I mean, their monsters get pretty big even without being the world's largest box, but I really did expect this to maybe be more packed, especially since it comes on the 2 bases. So let's take a look what we got for some instructions. So it's a total of 4 sprues. So the parapet he stands on looks like bits of the body. Okay, some more pieces. So 4, and this is one of them, actually. That's surprising how small that piece is. I'm looking for where he is. So this is the front. There's those various faces that you see. So where on this is he? Here we go. So it's a little bit of intermixing. So I'm curious how they'll do this for the other one. There's back, or I think that's technically the front, back, mid piece, and there's his face. So he is actually on this one. But, and taking a look at this, I'd have to look at the other ones more, the other one more as well. This is obviously the parts for the chair that he's sitting in, or standing in front of, I should really say. But for the faces, I thought this was one of the normal faces on this one. Yeah, it's the face. You see it right here. It's the face there on in this particular avenue on the far left. But, so does the other one have the same face? Or is the face different as well? Because otherwise, this would be the difference in sprues. Now, I'm not to say anything one way or the other about the cost to do this. Obviously, there is space to include the other one, but I think they saw with the Tauntaur and Drumbeast, then when they do that, just the extra in price. It can seem simple to throw an extra sprue in of this size. I'm assuming the other ones are roughly the same size. Maybe it's a little bigger, but it can seem simple to do that. But let's face it, with these companies, it can actually be a lot of money to do that. Each one of these, making plastic injection molding, is very, very expensive. Actually, the other face is here too. And that's the third one. So all of them are here. So does the other one have a different face? Let's take a look. All right, so is it up? Yes, the other face is a bit different. If you take a look at the other one, it is the one on this side. Instead of this particular face, it's essentially the same thing, but sticking its tongue out. The other two look pretty identical, at least from the picture that we have. So very interesting. So it looks like the main difference is this one. So it's one sprue that does the top parts, as well as a little bit of the different faces. So what's going to happen now is we're going to pause this a little bit, and I'm going to try to put this thing together to see just how big it really is. But I will say, I mean, I'm sure it gets very large, but looking at this, I don't know. It's long, but I'm curious about exactly how wide it's going to be. I know they've given us pictures. Oh, there's the card for him. I don't know where that was in here. So there's the Theokrator card. There's him standing on the top. And we have the 2 bases. So what I've done, because you saw this proxied at least on my behalf, what I did for that is essentially I put tape underneath. Probably the same, where I might even just try to glue them together, because I'm not going to transfer them separately from these. So anything that could put him together nicely would be good. But now let's actually put this guy together and see what we got. All right, let's talk about this model now that has been fully put together. As you can see, it is Actually, I can probably move this a little bit to maybe help out with that. But yeah, it needs 2 bases. This thing is very large. It's not as tall as I thought, actually. So for its length, like I said, it's about the 2 bases long. So the model itself is probably about the better part of 8 inches long. For actually total height, you're looking at about 7 inches for this thing. It is not wider than the bases, so depending how you transport it, that's not going to be much of a problem. God, I'm not doing separate. So what I'm actually going to do for this, the way I put it together, the whole bottom goes together pretty nice, I will say. And I'll pull this up as well to kind of talk about it. We're putting it together. What it really boils down to is, here we go. If you have this and you're putting this thing together, you're essentially putting together a whole bunch of pieces towards the front, and then you have 2 or so pieces to smack together the back. Once you have all that together, then there's a large piece that actually goes and sits inside. So the whole thing, obviously, is entirely hollow. What I will say, some little difficulties I found. One, use plastic glue. Don't use super glue. Because what I found is putting this together, the back 2, which are right here, when I had to put them, they were not positioned quite right. So I had to pull it further apart than I thought. So when I was putting these pieces in, everything went together pretty smoothly. The instructions I found were actually pretty good. But this piece here was further in, so it wasn't lining up. So I had to put one side on correctly, then pull and just hold it for a couple minutes. Whereas I'd done that with super glue, it felt pretty good. The spots I had it would have been entirely wrong. Once that happened, put some pillars on his back, put his faces on, his arms. This attachment is a separate piece. It does go right to sort of a connection on this underside here. But if you attach it here, and it does sit in there pretty nicely, it feels very natural the way it sits. What I will say is very nice about this model, there's only about 1 or 2 times where I was a little bit unsure how I was putting things. Everything else went in together really naturally. The only part that gave me some trouble was this particular back pillar. It does sit in there, but I kind of had to actually, maybe this was me the way I glued something a little bit, but I actually had to really push this one down. What actually I used is I put the top together. And for the top, so these are separate pieces. The back, it's a couple separate pieces and all, and it goes into the dais here. What I did was I tried to glue those together. There's little divots on the bottom of this dais to put them together on. And then that way, this can kind of just, one of these fences is still not the strongest. But that way, I can just kind of pop it right on. There we go. So it pops right on. This way I can glue it in pieces because it's going to be a hassle to reach the underside. So this one can be used while I'm kind of working on that. But it all went together really well. What I ended up doing, this all glued on. Actually, this side actually was a little bit of an issue. But obviously the person is separate, the Archimandrite, because I want to paint him separately. But even once I get him painted up, what I'm going to do, his whole bottom is open, and I have some green stuff here. What I'm actually going to end up doing is I'm going to green stuff. I just need a bigger magnet. The magnets I have right now are too small. Green stuff, a pretty sizable magnet into the bottom of him. The bottom of this, the main part here isn't flat, but I'm going to do it just off to the center. So he'll stand a little bit off to the side. But my idea is, because personally I'm not getting 2 of these. I don't plan to, at least. But when he's on there, he'll be the Theokrator. When he's not, he's the Profane Sepulchre if I want to run it that way. I mean, maybe at some later point I would do another, but for now, no, one is plenty. This model was an absolute joy to put together. Really went together nice. Like I said, a few little spots here and there. Less pieces than you would think. Kind of once you get the main body together, through this step, then it's just a little bits of, like I said, a couple connection points and all like that. I can tell by putting it together, like I said, if you get the Profane Sepulchre, one of the heads is different. You can see that head right there. The other 2. So up to this step, the first 27 things you're going to do is all the same. What's going to happen is, what are you putting on top? And when you slap it down. I did think about leaving this separate. You can't see it, but underneath the chair on this, there is a spot where if you really wanted to fully magnetize it, you could just kind of, I would probably Dremel this down a little bit. You could Dremel even this side down a little bit. That way you could put a big magnet in there to hold the chair down, or if you then wanted to print something to put on top to count as the sepulcher separately, you could do that. For me, like I said, personally, I'm just going to run it. If he's on there, he's one thing. If he's not, he's another. And I really actually do like this guy, so I'm going to use him as an extra Archimandrite, because once he's painted up, I think I technically have two, but I know only one's painted. So I'm going to use him once I get him fully painted up as the other Archimandrite. I'll just have a fancy base that has the magnet underneath it he can just hold on to. All right, well, that is this particular model. Gives you an impression of how big this thing is. It is quite big. This is going to be my painting project for the week, at least. Well, it's one of my painting things I'm going to do this week. I'm going to do this. I have another 3-pack of Caratids that I have to finish assembling 2 of them, which is probably what I'm going to sit down and do right now. And then paint this guy up. I have plenty of other things to paint up. I just got done with my Genyo no Yokai. So that's sitting over a little bit over that way right now. But like I said, great model to put together. I would absolutely keep it in some pieces like this. I think it fits pretty well. Like I said, I can kind of hold him underneath to paint him as I go along. I'm personally going to be using some contrast paints, at least to get some base layers down and then go up from there. But with these models, that's usually what I end up doing. And then, like I said, for this piece, kind of hold it pretty well. Like I said, I'm going to paint the underside. Once the underside's done, just gloved hand can hold it, and it really won't rub off if you do that. Or even if you paint the underside real quick, you can just give a quick protective spray coat so that way you can hold it without any problem. And then he'll be on a little plinth to get painted up. Like I said, I do thank Parabellum for sending this. I'm going to be working on it. The next time I do a battle report with this army, you're going to see him in there. My hope is to get a game or 2 in this week. Seems like a pretty good week to be able to do that, but we're going to find out for sure. And if you yourself are trying to pick up anything like this, we do have that discount code. You can save yourself 10%, get at least a little bit cheaper. But I now have some work to do on this thing. So on behalf of everyone at the show, have a good hobby. It's a great gaming.